Good morning. We are here this morning in the KDE boardroom to do an informal but formal presentation on the New Skills for Youth initiative. This is a planning grant, not a grant for stuff, not a grant for a bunch of people, not a grant for all those things that we all know that we need, but this is for planning for the future, for making a regional impact on kids and career and technical education. Taking some of the things you're already doing, taking your partnerships that you already have, and making it into a great place for students to learn in a new way. So the New Skills for Youth grant, just want to say it in case you got online and you said, wow, I can buy all this stuff. No, yeah, you can use your morning a different way, okay? So this is for planning, for how you would go about creating this new learning environment for your students in your region. So I welcome you. The RFP is available on the KDE website for the in the Grants and District Information Center. We also have those here, of course. We'll have several people with us today that we're going to be introducing as the morning goes along. I'll have them each introduce themselves. Also, we will have, and we'll be posting on the screen in just a bit, an email address where you can send your questions. So we welcome those, and we'll take a break a couple of times in as we get those questions, and we'll answer those here between me and our panel. Now, to make sure you understand who I am, I'm Jonna Rogers. I am a grant professional. I don't know nothing about career technical, so I'm not the person to answer that for you. However, we do have some experts here that will help with that. Most of you, I'm sorry to say, have probably heard me present before, and so you kind of know I'm going to go through this dry document, this RFA, and we're going to figure out the best ways to actually write the proposal. Because we can sit here and talk about it all day, but at some point you have to put pen to paper and actually make that happen. So we're going to try to help you through with that this morning. So I'm going to turn it over for just a moment to KDE co-patriot. I'll turn it over to Brandon for just a moment, see if he's got any comments for us this morning. And introduce yourself.
Okay. Well, good morning. And again, thank you for tuning in today. My name is Brandon Gossett. I'm with the Office of Career and Technical Education. I'm the Assistant Director of the College and Career Readiness Division, and also happen to be the main point of contact for the New Skills for Youth initiative here in Kentucky. So happy to be with you, glad to be talking about this. The release of this round 2 application or request for application was a long time coming, so we're glad it's here and glad to be kicking this off. So I will say, in regards to New Skills for Youth, you'll often hear the Associate Commissioner, Laura Arnold, will say that really the goal behind this is we want to transform the way career and technical education is delivered in the state of Kentucky. And the way we envision that happening is through these regional career academies. So I won't take up any more of your time this morning. John is going to dive right in. And we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of this thing, but really just wanted to mention that is our goal. We want to transform the way CTE is delivered, and these regional career academies, New Skills for Youth, is the way we hope to do that. So thank you, and thank you again for joining us.
Great. I'm going to give a little introduction about the RFA, and then we're going to talk to a grantee from last time. Because this was a new program last year, there were tons and tons of questions. And what do I do? And how can I do this? Well, now we've had people who've lived through it and who have some answers for us. So we'll have someone in just a moment to talk a little bit about that. So again, with your RFA in your hand, we're gonna kind of get started talking about a few things. Okay? Let's see. I always like to start off with something a little bit humorous, but also painful. I don't get it. I got a job at a fulfillment center, and I'm still miserable, right? Okay. And that's exactly where we all are from time to time. We think we've got this all figured out, and then we don't. Well, that's sort of what this grant is about. We are going to be planning to make things a little better. And this planning is not always going to be comfortable. I don't know about you, but I deal with people every day who don't want to change. And I don't want to change for change's sake, but this is about better ways of doing. Okay? So as we proceed with our our slides here, just know that this is about better ways of doing, not just doing something to get the money, not just doing something because KDE is making you. This is your choice to make some changes. Now, for those of you who have not met me yet or haven't heard me, I'm just a grant professional. I've been around for a long time. I do a number of trainings for KDE related to grants. I help my clients out all through the state do some grant work. But mostly what I try to do is just help other people do better with their grants, whether it's on the pre-award and the writing or the management. This stuff can be confusing. So that's kind of where I've made my bread and butter. It's a passion of mine. I am a geek to the third power. It is amazing how much geekness there is. So I've been around for quite a while, and I hope I have answers on how to develop a good proposal. That's the geeky part. While all the other experts in the room will help us with how to actually operate a good program. Okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this New Skills for Youth program. The New Skills for Youth program, if you'll look on a couple of pages first, we're going to skip around for a minute. On page 2, it gives you an intro on that. It's about incentivizing the opportunity for local districts to really get in there and teach in new and different ways, to bring people together in a regional capacity. As you know, some of our districts are extremely rural. They don't have access to a Louisville or an Owensboro or an Elizabethtown or a Bowling Green. They're by themselves, but coming together they can do something a little bit bigger. And even with our larger districts, it's doable there too. This is about doing more in your region. Also on page 2, you'll see where it talks about the rest of that purpose, increasing access, allowing students to earn industry-recognized credentials. All of these are key elements to why we're here. Okay? I never like to get too far from the purpose when we're dealing with all of this. Okay? And that, let's see. Also to transform. Now that word makes me nervous. That's a change word. We kind of overuse, and I'm sure I'll say the word innovation before the day is out, but we kind of overuse the word innovation. So transform, we're going to change it. It's like this and it's going to be like this. It was blue and now it's teal. Okay? We're going to transform it to something different. And that is painful sometimes. So we're going to hopefully have some strategies on how to help you do this. All right? Also on page 12, the plan will increase the number of students who have access to CTE programs. And these should lead to one of the 5 high-demand industry sectors. Okay? This isn't just, well, you know, kids make lots of money in welding. No, it's not like that. In Bowling Green, we need more personal chefs. Why? Because I need one. But that's not what this is. It's not something you think that you need in your community. It's something that the state and your region have told you is needed for your economy, for the state. Okay? So you're going to have to go back to those industry sectors there, right, to make some of those decisions. All right, so we're going to look at the RFA for just a little bit. We're going to do kind of, again, page 2, page 12. Keep going back to those. If you get confused about what this is about, that's what we're looking toward. Okay? So the RFA, we're going to do a quick review today. I'm not going to read this, but that would be mind-numbing. So all I'm going to do is look through this with you and point out a few things that are of interest. Okay? Whenever I'm writing a grant, I read the RFA at least 3 times. Okay? The first time is when I'm deciding if we're writing it. Is there anything in there that's just yucky? Is there something in there that's going to make me not sleep at night? Is there something in there that we can't do or can't afford to do? Or maybe, even with our partners, nobody else wants to do it. Sometimes we want to make change, but nobody else does. So sometimes we have to think about that. The second time I read it is pretty much the whole time I'm writing. I'm just going back through it. And then the day before I submit, I pull the RFA back out. And by then it's tattered, torn, highlighted, got all kinds of marks on it. And I read it from cover to cover one more time. Because I have found, and I'm embarrassed to say it, but 2 or 3 times out of 10, I've missed something. I've missed some little nuance, some little detail, and it's that kind of thing that can get you kicked out. So I've just learned over nearly 30 years of this, read it again. Okay? Make sure you get it in your head. Okay? So we're going to go through the scoring rubric as well, which is included in here, and all of the selection criteria, which is what you write to in your grant. And then we'll have a few ideas about how to help you meet your deadlines here. Okay. I always put this up. The first rule: this is not your money. You can't just spend it any way you want to. You've got to spend it on what KDE wants. Okay, what they're asking you to do here. Rule number 2, regardless of how much money it is and what you're supposed to spend it on, that's it. That's what you get. You don't get more. You don't get more. You don't get money for stuff. And number 3, that's my whining rule. If you have trouble with number 1 and number 2, then you shouldn't apply. There's a great way to avoid the red tape of grants. Don't do them. That's it. Nobody's making you. So whenever you apply for a grant, you're saying, when you submit that, you're saying, I'm good to go. I pinky swear I'm going to do this with a smile on my face at least 90% of the time, okay? I'm going to be happy that we get this when we get it, okay? All right, let's see. And the money's pretty good for a planning grant. There's a total of $690,000, and that's $115,000 per. Now let me make a note here. Don't ask for less. Okay? Don't think it makes you look good to ask for $110,000 or for $99,425. Don't do it. Ask for the $115,000. Okay? You're going to need it. I mean, you'll find you need it, and KDE has an expectation that you'll need it. So it's not going to make you look any better to ask for less. The award is actually for 12 months. You'll see there it says 11 because I didn't catch that typo, but it's for 12 months, and it goes from July 1 through June 30. Okay, so it starts on July 1, and later we'll look at the assurances and a timeline of how your implementation will occur. Okay. Now, an RFA, as we get a little further into the weeds, is an instruction book. Okay? That's all it is. I have for years compared it to a bicycle when you put a bicycle together. But this last year, I had the great opportunity to put together not 1, but 2 trampolines. I now know that the better analogy is the trampoline. My husband and my son-in-law, the one is a retired GM employee, 30 years with GM, built Corvettes. The other is an engineer. So you can imagine that backyard when we were putting together that first trampoline and when the instruction book sat nicely over by the tree. And then 3-4 hours later, when they were finally putting it together for the 4th time, number 1, 2, and 3 didn't go so well. And then they figured out the instruction book had some pretty good tips on how to make it happen. After that, piece of cake. A few weeks later, my husband and I were laying it out so that our boys could come and put it together because we weren't going to try that again. And I convinced him that we could do it much more quickly this time. We did it in 1 hour and 20 minutes, he and I. A trampoline's very specific. Piece over here, piece over there, piece over here, piece over there. That's what a grant is like. Every piece has to go in the appropriate place or your reviewer won't find the answer. And to use the language of our day, you have one job, okay? One job, and that is for someone to read your answers. That's it. If your answers aren't there, you don't get points. If your answers are on the wrong page, they may not see it. So it's important to write it in order, the way it's presented in your instructions book. Okay? Don't be my husband and son-in-law. Read the instructions. Okay? Read those. You also may email KDE. On the front page of the RFA is the KDE email address, and you can ask them questions through March 12th. Okay? So if you come up with questions as you go, March 12th is your date to come back in and make sure that you have your questions answered. And it's noon on March 12th, by the way. So even people like me who read an RFA, we look at stuff and go say, what? What? Okay, so don't be surprised if that happens to you. Ask a question and see if it gets answered. Also, the questions to the RFA will be answered and posted periodically on the grant site, so you'll be able to check those out as you go, not in one final fell swoop. They'll keep adding amendments to that every week. Okay? All right, but this is your day to ask questions live. And with that, it's a pretty good time for us, before we get into the nitty-gritty, as everybody's getting settled down with their coffee now and everybody's ready to hear all about New Skills for Youth. I'm going to introduce our guest. Mark's here with us from Corbin. We're going to, I just want to listen to him, and I may ask him a couple of questions as we go about what it's like to have a New Skills for Youth project, how you did it, what were some of your problems, all those things.
Okay, thank you.
And tell about yourself. Yes.
Yeah, my name is Mark Daniels. I'm Director of Support Services with Corbin Independent Schools. And this is a partnership. It's a partnership with other school districts. It's a partnership with your ATCs. It's a partnership with post-secondary institutions, as well as, and most importantly, too, industry. And having those business and industry partners on board, because what we're trying to do is create a pipeline of aligned courses. This is what you need to take. This leads to an industry certification, and this leads to a high-paying job and career that is in high demand. And that sounds fairly simple, but it isn't, because you have so many moving pieces and parts, very similar to what you described with the trampoline there, where you have to get people into a room and work things out. Because for our experiences, we're looking at certifications with, okay, who can teach what and how, and what is legal, and working with EPSB in relation to the teacher certifications and how all that works, because you may have a very experienced industry person that really wants to be involved with schools and teaching young people how to do certain things. They've got the skills to be able to show them, but that person may not necessarily be certified. How do you go about getting all of that taken care of so that you're in compliance with state regs and all that? Schedules, that is a huge issue, and especially when you're dealing with multiple school districts, one school may be on a trimester, one school may be in a semester. How does that work? Is there a better way to do this? And that's one of our big hurdles that we're trying to be able to accommodate students and fit their needs. Then the other big issue that we're dealing with is working with apprenticeships and internships, and how should they be set up? And that ties back in with schedules as well. We're really trying to target about 25 to 30% of our students who we want to give them something very tangible, and where they just don't graduate and they've got that diploma. They may go off to college. They may spend a few years trying to find themselves. I think we've all been there, have done that. But that's a high stakes game, because you can find yourself, especially if you go on to college and you're experimenting with majors, and then you may end up with a degree, and then you have $100,000, $200,000 in debt, and you may not have a job. And that's really tough. And so this is a perfect piece of the puzzle to align courses with industry certifications and meeting high demand jobs and careers that pay extremely well, because we're also involved with the Work Ready Skills Initiative, and we have to measure youth as well as adults with that particular initiative in securing work that pays at a minimum around the $35,000 range and above. And so it all kind of works together, but you've got to get everybody together in some capacity, and it's not just one big meeting, you hammer it out and get it done. You have this great big document. No, it doesn't work that way. You've got to work through all of these different pieces. And so we've had multiple meetings, some with industry providers, some with post-secondary institutions, and of course all our school districts, our public school districts that are involved with the partnership, and trying to hammer some of these things out. And it's not an easy fix, but we are chunking things as we go and say, okay, yeah, I think we got a working plan here. So, and right now, as far as one of our successes, we're working on flexible scheduling for students to help override trimesters and semesters and whatever other mester that you may have out there. Yeah, with this grant, we're able to go visit school districts, other school districts that have a lot of these pieces already in place. So we've been able to take advantage of that. In fact, we're getting ready to go to a school district this Friday and visit them. So that's exciting. And see, oh yeah, that's how they've got this fixed. Okay, let's steal, take, whatever, and put that into the puzzle. Sometimes it works, and sometimes it works in that particular instance, but it may not work depending on where you are, because what you brought up in relation to Louisville or Bowling Green, where you do have a large manufacturing base, in a rural area, you may not have that there. So you have to be very creative as far as getting with what business and industry that you have, addressing those high demand sectors where they have high demand jobs ready, and being able to meet them. But we have had a lot of good support from our industry partners because they need people and they need to fill jobs right now. So it's that's been a really pleasant surprise. Not a good word for it, but a pleasant experience working with these industry providers. They're saying, we need this, and how can we help? So.
Okay, let me ask you a couple of questions.
Sure.
Now, where will your kids go? Do you envision a single campus? Are they gonna, you mentioned, doing apprenticeships. Where do you think they're gonna end up? Where are they gonna go?
Yeah, first of all, we have to look at, we don't have one big situation where they can all come. We're having to look at is all these different, wherever we can find space, and basically securing talent to implement that particular training. And I'll give a good example. We have 2 school districts that we're partners with. We have a media arts program, which is one of our pathways. It ties in with tourism. It ties in with a number of different facets that are in high demand. And so we have a teaching force that we're able to deliver. We have 2 school districts that do not have a media arts pathway program. And they have students that want to learn this. So how can we get everybody together? It may be through virtual means, and it's a combination. It's not just one size fits all. We have to work out schedules. We have to utilize technology to whatever element we can use, and go with it from there. So that's one good example of that. And we're piecing it as we go. We're building that airplane as we go. But we have those resources. We're trying to get those out to other students that want to take advantage of that.
Which is the whole purpose of having it regionally, so that what you've been doing, because I know you guys have had a media focus first through your after school and then kind of stretching it over the more than a decade now.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're comfortable with that, but these kids want to be part of that too.
Exactly.
So it's a great opportunity to be able to offer students in another school district more. And that's, I had a conversation this morning, virtual. I think, let's see, we were on Facebook message, my daughter. And she's considering with her 5-year-old, where should I put her in school next? And she said, so what do I look for? And I said, you look for everything. You look for love. You look for hope. You look for tools. You look for great teachers. You look for good curriculum. You look at everything. And then you'll make a decision, and it'll be the right one.
Sure.
And and so that's what parents are trying to do. This helps that, because now parents will have more choices if we can make this happen. And remind me, the students who participate stay with their home district in terms of funding and all those other things?
Yeah, and that, a lot of that depends on how we work a lot of this out. And because you can get into shared time students, you can get into a number of different facets that's part of this planning process, because you may spend several meetings on just that particular component.
Somebody has to pay for the
this work?
teachers, right? Somebody's got to pay for that smart person who's coming in and teaching that course, right?
Exactly, yeah. One of the big sectors that we're really trying to focus on, and this really came through the planning process of the grant, and it really came to the top, is working with our BAM, which is Building and Apartment Maintenance, construction. We had all of these industry providers that were signed on with our project, and they said, we really need people that can lay brick, that can do drywall. We really need this in this area, and especially in our region of the state, because if you want to learn those particular trades that are high paying, they have to leave our region and go to far ends of the state to even pick up that industry certification. So what we're trying to do, and this came through that planning process, is, okay, how can we accommodate this and be able to meet the needs of our region? And this is a high demand sector as well. So, I mean, a lot of it is discovery and how we're putting those pieces together, because we don't have a whole lot of teachers or the traditional teacher who can come in and do that. So we're having to look at these industry specialists who may be able to come in and teach students. And how do we work with certifications on that? So.
And I would, I'm hearing a lot of facilitation skills, I can see why the RFA says you may pay for part of a person to help do some of this work, because it would take a lot for you to do all of it, wouldn't it?
Yes, oh, definitely. You've got to have help all along the ways, and especially coordinating visits, these school visits, getting meetings together, because you're not just getting school staff within your district together, you're getting other school districts staff together, plus industry, plus post-secondary, you name it. So you're having to reach out, and that takes time.
Let me ask you one more question that you may not want to answer in a public forum. Has everybody played well together in the sandbox? How's that going?
I think this is the best way that we can answer this question, is what are we trying to do? And we're trying to help kids and create a better future. And I think it's hard to argue. It's like, no, we don't want a better future.
That's right.
No,
Yeah.
we want to be failures. Yeah. And once you all have that common ground, then you start working through those pieces.
Keep coming back to the purpose, right?
Exactly.
Back to the purpose. That's the number one thing in grants I tell folks. You got to get out of your own head and about the thing you need today and refocus. Why are we here? What are we doing? And then try to keep digging through the stuff. Lots of it in this,
That's
right?
exactly right.
That's right. That's why you get a year to do it. You're, what, halfway through?
Yes.
A little over halfway, right?
Yeah. And still moving forward. And we're very excited because one of our main elements that we really have to do is get something in play for next year based upon this. And so we have already worked out a flexible schedule to implement. And so hopefully within this next trimester, we're actually going to be able to get ahead of the game there and actually start implementing with a few of our students to get things started. So we're excited about that.
That would be excellent. So, as we move forward, remember that you don't just ask questions of me. You're asking questions of KDE and questions of Mark. Let's find out what's holding you back from moving on to this particular project and deciding on whether you're going to be trying to implement, or at least begin the planning process. Right? Very smartly done to have that year to think through and work through and sometimes push through some of these issues. So thank you very much. We'll come back to you. All right, so your request for application, now that you know a little bit more about kind of the process. So this document, this request for applications, some of us who are old call it the request for proposals, has a lot of information about it in it about the who, what, why, when. You heard reference to it in our conversations already this morning. So got lots of things in there that will help you with your decision making, including any really odd rules. There are a few that are kind of odd, so we'll talk about those things. And also, I want you to, anytime you write a grants proposal, I tell this to everybody, it comes back to the money not being free. It is a focused pot of money. So you have to keep remembering that this isn't to take care of the other things. It is a focused project. It's going to be a project for planning that will help you do a better job with your regional academy as you go through. All right, so the cover page. There are some important things on the cover page. There always are. I think KDE puts them on the front so we don't miss them. And one is the deadline. It's that your eyes naturally fall to it. Okay, the deadline is 4 p.m. Eastern Time on March 26th. Now, I'm going to stress this now. I'm going to stress it later. That's Eastern Time. Okay. I'm from the Central Time Zone, so Eastern Time. And it is an emailed application. So you need to make sure it gets past the KDE firewalls before 4 o'clock on that day, Eastern Time, right? And trust me when I tell you, KDE will not read it if it arrives late. They won't, and that's an awful feeling. So make sure you get that correct. Also, you'll see the KDE email address where you can both submit your proposal to, and you may ask questions of that once we get into the process. Again, for today, we're going to use the Soapbox email address Soapbox address, that's not an email. The Soapbox address, and we'll get that up on the screen for you in just a moment, so you can continue to answer questions, or ask questions, and hopefully we'll answer them. Also, let's see, those questions will be posted on the KDE website so that you can see the answers to those in an appropriate format. But if you don't ask the question, we can't answer it, so make sure you ask. Now, at the bottom there are some shalls, okay? So in order for it to be read, you shall meet the deadline. You shall include application components as described on page 6. We'll look at those in a minute. And you shall follow the formatting, okay? That's how many, it's double spaced in the margins, all of that. And we will go over that thoroughly, okay? You'll be going, Jonna, can you talk about something else? No, I can't. No, I can't. All right, so page 2, let's look at page 2. The deadline is repeated there. I always think that when the deadline is repeated, that means that they kind of want you to know that. Okay, so the deadline's repeated there. Also, the program seeks to transform. There's that transform word I talked about earlier. Seeks to transform the teaching of career and technical and how we bring people together for these types of academies, so that they can be better prepared. I'm going to grab my slides since I can't. My eyes are too old to see all the way over there. Okay. Also, you'll notice there that it talks about including, increasing student access to dual credit. Dual credit is not an afterthought in this proposal, and it should not be for you either. Dual credit isn't just a nice thing we're going to do. It's a requirement. And the dual credit has to be approved. So it's going to have to align to all of your workforce plans that you're making, your pathways. But, it can't be dual credit in underwater basket weaving. It has to be appropriate. Okay? And you'll remember that, because I'm assuming you've all read this already, that you're talking about the whole of the child, not just a course or two. Through this academy, they'll be able to get their dual credit, their basics, all their curriculum courses. So it needs to be aligned with that. Also, providing an opportunity to earn industry certifications that are approved, looking at that work-based learning model, and also keeping with those top 5 industry, the identified industry sectors that are in high need and that are also high paying. Let's just face it, they are. We got to get them done. All right, still on page 2, the purpose for the planning of the regional academies. These are supposed to be employer-driven. I'm going to really harp on that in a little bit, okay? Employer-driven. They should provide all-day learning. This isn't just night courses. This isn't just they go to English and math in this one place and they go somewhere else in the afternoon, although some models will differ. But they've got to be able to have this as a whole slate of learning for them. And also, again, to transform the high school experience. I remember last year, one of the things that was really challenging was, okay, so if a kid chooses this path, then they don't get athletics. If a kid chooses this path, they don't get band. No, 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 no. This is a different way of doing things. They still are part of all of that. And that's part of the challenge of this planning. How do I make sure that Johnny is still playing football and that Susie is still playing softball? How do I continue to make all of that happen? And that was probably culturally insensitive. Susie can play football if she wants to. She could if she was my daughter. I'm not going to do it. All right. So as we continue to look, page 2 talks about the eligibility. Eligibility may be the very first, number one thing you need to look at in a grant proposal when you're reading it. Are you even eligible to apply? Because if you're not eligible to apply, you will be spinning your wheels. You won't win. And you've just wasted, 100 hours of work in preparing the proposal. So make sure you read that list carefully on page 2. 2 or more school districts. But wait, we don't have a district nearby, so can't we just do it for ourselves? No, you can't. No. 2 or more. Got to have it. A post-secondary partner, but we don't have anybody near it. Too bad, too sad. Go find one. Okay? There are all kinds of universities, colleges that are willing, and by the way, it says post-secondary. So you got a little more leeway there, not just a university. At least 2 employers, business and industry. State or local technical center has to be involved with you. At least 1 community partner. And there is a board resolution that must be signed by the participating districts. Now, if you haven't started on that yet, that's probably the first thing to start on. Okay? I don't know about you, but my limited involvement with school boards is that they like to know a lot early, and they don't like surprises. Would that be a fair statement? Okay. So if you're considering doing this, I suggest a meeting very quickly so that you can get input and find out how to get that through that process. You don't want to do a lot of work and then your school board say, I don't know. So you want to be careful with that. In addition, there are some other things that it requires, including those signed assurances. All of that's got to be there. As you move through those through page 2, you'll see a number of other things. Also, and I've got a big on here, I want to make sure you get it again about the dual credit. Okay? Dual credit is not optional. Not optional. Okay? There is also a new cover page this year and a new eligibility form. Now, this is the first opportunity I've had to say, if you wrote this proposal last year, this one is very different. Things have moved around. There are different criteria. There are different information that you have to write to. So don't just dust off last year's proposal. I'll talk more about it in a bit, but this is a new format. So be aware of that. Okay. All right, pages 2 through 3 talks about the funding. We're talking about the funding there and how much you can get, the $115,000 for the 12-month period. And it shows some allowable sources of spending, but this is not all-inclusive. Okay? There's also some unallowed, but anytime you have a project like this, there's going to be a list of allowable and unallowable. But for example, let's see, on allowable uses, it's got salary, travel, planning meetings, related marketing fees. It doesn't, and it says expenses specific to the planning of the grant. It doesn't specifically say chart paper. I would suspect you could buy some chart paper. Okay, so this is not an exclusive list. It just has to be used for these purposes. Okay? Also, once you're funded, if you've not really had a KDE grant in a while, once you're funded, you usually sit down or have a phone call with them to go over some of the expenses. So because it's a reimbursement grant, well, this one's actually paid in quarters, isn't it? So you'll usually want to make sure you know exactly what you're spending. Those lists will be approved as you go through. And supplanting. Now, supplanting, most school districts know what this is. Supplanting's not a good thing. You're not allowed to supplant. So if you already have a person who's doing this exact job and you're paying them to do this exact job, you probably couldn't pay them out of these funds. That would be a conversation you need to have with KDE as you move forward. Okay, so just be aware of that. Because if you've already got the money, why do you need, you've got some money. Just a thought. And there are truly laws on that. Now on page 3 through 6, we're going to start talking about some definitions. I'm not going to cover them all, but I am going to cover a few that kind of impact how you write the proposals. Okay, so I'm just going to cover a few. You need to make sure you read them all as we go through this. Okay. All right. So our first definition, we're going to talk about those the Academy Steering Committee. Now there are at least 3 groups that you have to have here. And this gets a little down in the weeds, okay? The newer RFA has better definitions in it. But basically, you've got an Academy Steering Committee that's 50% business and industry and 50% education. Okay? And their role there with this is to guide the overall program. Okay? They're serving to help you keep in the right direction. Okay? We'll talk about the other committees in a moment, but that's their role there. And you must have one. And they must have meetings, and they must meet regularly. Okay? How are you going to do that, and who's going to be on your advisory team, right? I've made a note on my slides. It says this is for the overall guidance, whereas the Program Advisory Committee is more about the pathway selection and getting things through that way. Okay? Again, you're going to have guidance on how this lays out for you. All right, keeping on, the employer partner is listed there. That's a local labor market area leader, okay? An employer partner. That, again, it's a requirement. You must have that. You can't just say, well, we just thought we would get, I don't know, the Burger Barn. Is that okay? Well, you can put that in your grant proposal, but as this is my favorite saying of the year, you could also light your pants on fire. That's just not a good decision, okay? Just not good. Okay, so get an industry, get a business, get your hospital, get whatever's in those 5 areas of needed employment that's going to pay well. Nothing against the Burger Barn. Okay. Notice I didn't pick a real place. I was searching my brain for that. Again, the dual credit is going to be mentioned over on page 4. It has to be an approved course. Community partners also talked about. High demand sectors, the top 5. Okay? Those are listed there. Advanced manufacturing, business and IT services, construction, healthcare, and transportation and logistics. Okay? In a perfect world, this regional academy that you are planning to create would supply jobs in one or more of those areas for your regional community that are high paying, and it will, I hate to say it, keep your kids near you. I'm a grandparent. I like having my kids near me. I also like that they make good money. So let's do what we can. This is one way. Industry certifications is always mentioned that. Those have to be from a third party. This isn't something you've created. You give them no, it's an industry certification that's recognized. Okay? And then also each partner must submit a letter of commitment. Now there is a format for that. You'll see that in a minute. This is not a love letter. This is not, gosh, we just love them. They have been working in the community for so long. We just know that if they get this grant, it'll be the best thing ever. I can't stand that. It has to be substantive. As we say in writing, don't say nothing. Say something. So don't say nothing. Don't give us a love letter there. Use that form wisely. Pages 4 and 5 talks about licenses. Again, are the credentials most similar to the qualifications it says in there? Okay, is earning a license to practice usually requires examination by a licensing board, etc. Those are specific. This isn't something you're making up. Look at those definitions. And then your planning team is described on page 5 of your RFA. Again, this is a specific group, and the planning team to me are the worker bees. These are the folks who are going to go look at those sites and do those site visits. These are the folks who are coordinating the meetings, who are making sure everything's happening. They are grossly involved, very, very involved in how this is going to take place. So I like to think of them as the worker bees. And again, it's different people on this group than on the others. The Program Advisory Committee is listed there, and that is really to help you with those pathways, okay? Helping you to figure out what the program of studies is going to be. And again, lots of people who are not from education on that. Years ago, I can remember being in Chamber of Commerce meetings, and even, this is 15, 18 years ago, we were still saying, you know, my employees can't pass the drug test or the math test. They come to me and I get them, and there are deficits there. Well, we've been working hard on that, and this is another step in that direction. This is about getting industry to the table so that we can help them fill their jobs. That's an important part of this grant. Okay? So again, I like to look at it this way: worker bees, overall guidance from the academic steering committee, and then pathway selection. That's just a kind of how I get it in my head. Okay? All right, so the program of studies, that's defined there on page 5. Right? And the first word I've got up there, what is comprehensive? Yeah, comprehensive. This isn't about one certification. It's not about one kid who wants to do one thing. This is about how can we provide several options, many options, for different ways for kids to learn as they move forward. Okay? So how are we going to do that with our project? Yeah? How are we going to prepare them for post-secondary for that program of study? And it should lead to a industry-recognized credential, post-secondary credential, certificates and degrees, and ultimately high-paying jobs. Okay? Ultimately jobs that will be careers for them, as Mark was saying. Okay? It also needs to align with the WIB, with the Workforce Development or Workforce Investment Board. Needs to align to that as well. Okay? This isn't something we're making up. We're putting good things together. And then the Regional Career Academy requirements are located there on the bottom of page 5, going over to page 6. Please make sure you read through that very well. You don't need to have me read it to you, but there are several things there. 9 to 12 seamless transitions from post-secondary and training opportunities or workforce. All-day learning environment established in the partnership. Again, this is not your little brother's tech, that they're going to the tech place and learn how to fix a car. Now, maybe yes, maybe they are learning some of that, but that's not the whole purpose. The whole purpose is the whole child and the career. Okay? All right, lots of things there. And then on page 6, you must identify the fiscal agent. Okay? Who's filing this proposal? That is your cover page. And in a minute, we're going to go through all the pages. But for now, just know that these are the pieces of that application. They're listed there, and this is the order in which you must present them. Now, I have a very famous line. It's called the piss-off factor. You write this in the wrong order, you've just pissed off your readers. Okay? You would not want to read a book that was written backwards. You don't want to read a newspaper where they put the sports section in the wrong place. It makes us furious. Imagine that in your one job, you decide, oh, let's just make it pretty. I think this part should go first. No, people have to read this, and they want to read them that are all similar, in the same shape, the same size, they're all looking the same. It makes their jobs easier. So write it in order. Okay? Also, the formatting is listed there on the next, well, let me back up. This is my representation of the dummy copy. Okay? If I were in my house and I was trying to get ready to write this proposal, on the very first day I would create a dummy copy because I don't want to have to worry about later thinking, okay, which page goes first. It also helps me when I'm working with a team so that I can show them, okay, these are the pieces and parts. Okay? I'm working on a proposal right now. I'd have to do my alphabet, but it has A through H appendices. And that gets really kind of crazy trying to make, so I always put everything in order so that I can go through them quickly and make sure I haven't missed something. You don't want to not be funded because you missed a piece of paper. And that can happen. That can happen. All right, so page 6 is the formatting. Very important that you get this correct. And there are a couple of things that are interesting here. First, Arial or similar 12-point font. Yes, you may use Times New Roman. That is considered an appropriate font, but no narrows. Don't do Arial narrow or Calibri narrow. Just 12-point, and Times New Roman takes up less space. So just that's what I use. Also, the margins there, you get a 1/2-inch margin at the top if you like, and bottom, and then a 1-inch margin on the sides. 15 pages is all you get for your narrative. What's the narrative? That's when you write the responses to those criteria, and we'll look through that in just a moment. The pages should be numbered starting with page 1 of your narrative as page 1. You don't have to worry about numbering the other pages, but you'll start on page 1, so the first page is page 1, and the last page is probably page 15 of that. And then you'll have other attachments behind that. You'll also get to double space your proposal, makes it easier for everybody to read, and you're allowed to single space bullets. Okay, keep those at 12 point, but if you use charts or graphics, those can be at a smaller font. Those can be at 10 point. Now, a word to the wise: not everything can be in a chart. Okay, I know, I've tried. Not everything needs to be in a chart. Think about how your reader reads, and don't cram too much text into one spot. There's a reason, if you've looked at websites any recently, that there's been a huge shift in what we see on our screen. We don't see much text. You get a headline, a graphic, maybe a picture. And then if you want to see text, you can click something. Well, the point of that is nobody likes to read a lot. So be careful if you shove it all into a text box. Again, that might have a little of that piss-off factor in there. Okay. All right, I'll point to the bottom. There is in bold and italics. It says, failure to follow the formatting requirements may deem your application non-responsive. That is code for we may throw you in the trash can. Okay? So nobody wants to do that. But for example, if you wrote a 30-page single-spaced narrative, that totally violates the rules. And KDE may very well just say, no, not going to do it. So, and that's happened. If you think KDE won't, that has happened before. Okay. All right, top of page 7. And for those of you who are with us electronically, we're going to go to the top of the hour and maybe take a 5-minute break or so, and then come back in. That way I can take a sip of coffee while I'm not talking, right? All right, so the top of page 7 talks about the intent to apply. That is for KDE's purposes, so they know how many applications to expect. That's just an email to the KDE email that's on the front cover, and you need to send that by February 8th. And all you have to say, you don't have to put a lot of fluff in there. You don't have to tell them who your partners are. All you have to do is say, Lovely County, Kentucky, and our partners plan to apply for the New Skills for Youth grant. And thank you very much. Always say thank you. But that's all you have to say. And they will track that to know that they're going to have 5 applications or 50. The technical assistance you're in right now, but again, turn in those questions. That's in the middle of the page by March 12th. And the first, we'll actually have some of the FAQs from this session will be posted there coming up in a week or two. And then after that, every week they will be posting those updates online. Okay, so that's nice. The deadline is mentioned yet again. Okay, so you'll want to check that out. Make sure you get it submitted by 4 p.m. Eastern Time on March 26th. All right, so talking about how to submit. You are indeed going to submit to the KDE email address. You will, and there are several instructions there on making sure you have a document that is in a proper format. Make sure you name it appropriately. There is a there is a naming nomenclature that KDE uses so they can easily see which applications have been turned in. Also, some applications that KDE receives, they ask you to blind your copies, but that's not the case here. Because of all the partnerships, you don't have to blind. Everybody's names can be in there. So that's not a problem. Okay. Let's see. Once you hit submit, because it is your responsibility to actually submit, it is perfectly okay to email KDE again and say, hey, did you get my proposal? I'm just checking. What I tend to do is hit submit, walk around the office, or in my case, change out the laundry. I work from home. Go do some other things, take about 5 minutes, come back, and then I send my email. Okay, and I ask, did you get my proposal? Now, the grants branch is not going to say, we did, and it's wonderful. Thank you so much. No, they're not even going to open it, but they're going to see that you sent it. Okay, and so they will tell you that, but it helps you feel good. Now, keep in mind that KDE may not answer it immediately. If it's a Friday, for example, some of our folks work on a short week, and so they may not answer their email. But again, you can absolutely email them and ask them if they received it. Okay? Doesn't mean it's good, doesn't mean it's all there, it just means that they got your file. Okay? All right, let's see. Follow the naming instructions, it's your responsibility. Yep, you can ask them once you hit send. All right, so evaluation of the application, and so that is also code speak for reading. Who's going to read the application? Now, the application will have, as I recall from last year, we had a mix of business and KDE staff, folks who were partners on various things. Some of the leaders of some of these groups that you'll be partnering with, they were reading this, and they will go through a training on what to look for in your proposal. So, for example, earlier today, this morning, I said, "Hey, we've redone the RFA, so don't write on the same order as your last proposal." Well, I'm going to make sure they hear that as well, so they're going to know, and they'll be able to tell quickly if you just brushed off an old proposal. So be aware of that. Anything I tell you, I'm likely to tell them as well when we do the training after you've submitted your proposals. Okay. The contract award date is at the bottom. They are hopeful of an April 23rd notice of award, and they do a pretty good job of that. Awards are usually announced, and not always, but usually in the Commissioner's Monday email. So if a Monday comes and goes and you haven't heard anything nearer that date, keep in mind they just probably hadn't posted it yet. It'll be the next Monday. But you can make a phone call and see where the process is. Okay. Let's see. All right. Where are we going? Okay. I think we'll stop right here for about 5 minutes. We will look over any questions that may have come in, and we will be back. So we're going to dim our screen, and I think we'll probably play some lovely music. We'll be back at 5 minutes after 10. All right, well, welcome back, everybody. We are on page 9 of the RFA. It's my hope that we push through to close to lunch. We'll see how the questions come in. One thing that KDE would like me to remind you of is that when you do submit an online question to KDE, make sure you don't have anything embarrassing in that question. It's going to be posted just like you send it. So, for example, if you're having trouble, let's say that you're Lovely County Lovely County High School, and your tech center is just a pain in the rear end. Don't put the name of the tech center. Don't put your name in there. Just say, we are a county, and we would like to know the best way of approaching the tech center. So these will be posted, not blinded, as sometimes they do, but because of the relationship pieces here, those answers are going to go straight in. Okay, so make sure that you are aware of that. Okay? So back into your RFA, we're going to look at page 9, and this is where the changes in the RFA have come. Okay, from last year, the 2017 was the first cohort, and the selection criteria were listed in a different order. In fact, some of them have disappeared completely. So you really do need to pay attention when you're writing this proposal. Okay, there were a few that were added, some that were eliminated, some that were revised, so you just want to make sure you write what's requested. Okay? Don't just dust it off. I guess I need my clicker. I'm always talking about I need permanent Velcro on my hip to keep the thing. All right, so these are the evaluation criteria. And what the heck's a criteria? It's an open response question that's written in a sentence form, like describe your program. Okay? So these are the questions you're going to be asked, and you'll start seeing those on page 9. But they're grouped in 5 sections. You've got the employer-driven process, the support, the program of studies and pathway options, the regional career academy, and the budget section. Now, gee, one or two of those sections is worth a little bit more points than the other. I wonder which ones I should pay the most attention to. Well, yeah, employer-driven process and the plan for the regional career academy seem to have the most focus there. Right? And we'll look at that in a couple of other ways as well, but I want to go through and look first, before we dive into the criteria, into your other forms. So we're going to go past page 9 to page 10. Page 10 includes your cover page. Okay? And on your cover page, you want to fill out every single box. Don't skip something. Make sure all the signatures are there as well. Also, page 11 is the eligibility form. This is the new form, one of the new things from this year. So you're going to have this, it asks you the questions related to, are you eligible? So if you go back to I think page 2 and 3, you'll see all that listed. It's right here on this form as well. Page 12 are your assurances, and I also, this is a timeline for me. This is something that the fiscal agent, the person who's the district that's receiving the funds, this is something they will sign, and this is your pinky swear. Okay? This says, I'm going to do it. This is what we're going to do. This is the timeline, so you won't be surprised at some point when you go, oh, wow, it's December. What was I supposed to be doing in December on this grant? Well, go back to here, and that will help you just a bit. Also, page 13, last time you were asked to do your own table of contents. This is still your own, but you're going to use this form. And you're just going to take this form and put the page numbers in of where it starts. For example, most likely, employer-driven process is page 1. Okay? You'll write a few pages, then you'll put a page number in for support. And that's your next page. So the first page is your cover page. The next page is your eligibility form. The next page is your assurances that are signed. Then you have your table of contents. Then comes your narrative, your 15 pages of narrative. Now, in your RFA, KDE took out the exact specific formatting requirements and put them there again, and also the criteria. These are the same things that you'll see on page 9. They just look a little different. We'll crosswalk that in a minute. Then you've got, let's go past those 5 sections, parts 1 through 5, and you will see your budget narrative form. Now, there are budgets that are complicated and budgets that are simple. This is a pretty simple budget form, okay? And you can erase some of these things that are in the box on the left if you choose to, but they're just getting you started. You may want to have a team planning lead, somebody who's helping you with this process. We'll talk about budget in just a little bit. And I knew I'd eventually just run into this. Okay, back one more slide we go. So your next page after page 17, page 18, is the board resolution that we referenced. And this board resolution should be just like this. You don't make up your own resolution. This is the board resolution. Okay? You're going to keep this and make sure it's been appropriately adjudicated by your board. Okay? That was one of the things I asked last time was, can they change that? Because that, no, that's your board resolution. Okay? All right, so your letter of commitment example is on page 20. Okay? Again, you want to make sure that this is not a love letter. This is a letter that says, we are going to do these things. And they give you kind of a template. If I were writing this, I would keep pretty close to that. Okay? a format that follows that exactly, has everybody signing at the bottom, and has some bullets, that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 there, of what we're going to do. Now yours may be a little different, but you're going to have this format. Why? Because your reader needs to see it in a familiar way. You don't want to, you know, have them use a QRL code or something. You want to make sure that it's in there the way it's supposed to be. All right? It's your letter of commitment, and then you have your rubric. Okay, so the last 3 pages of your RFA, beginning on page 22, is the scoring rubric. And this is a pretty typical rubric, okay? Again, divided up by the sections, with the very good on the left, the good or fair in the middle, and the, oh my goodness, you really said that, on the right. Yeah, not a good one, okay? These crosswalk back to those selection criteria, and we'll take a look at that in just a bit. But if you get stuck writing something and you're not sure you've got it in your head, go back to this page, and this may help you a little bit to generate some of those ideas. All right, now sometimes, especially because we work with teams in Kentucky when we write grants, and that's true everywhere, not just Kentucky, it's good to think about how many pages you're going to write in each section. Okay? There's nothing worse than asking your colleague to write a section on XYZ, and they write 5 pages when you needed 5 paragraphs. Okay, there's nothing worse than that, because now everybody's mad, and you've got to do more work to cut it. So when you look at the evaluation criteria, I like to think about it in terms of the numbers of pages. This is Jonna's rule. This is not even a rule. This is a guideline. So when I look at it, I go, okay, the evaluation criteria, and actually, that's the old one, looks like. Okay, so that should say 30, 20, 10. But it's going to be about, oh, take a look at the next page. I got a bad slide and good slide. So go to the next slide. I'm in charge. Here we go. Okay, so this is the one. 30, 20, 10, 30, 10. And that equates to about 4.5 pages for your employer-driven process. Now, I'll tell you, I'm probably going to do 5 or 5.5. Why? Because I just know me. I'm compelled to put more in that first section. How do I know that? I did it this morning, okay? So I know that on any grant I do, that first section, I'm going to try to hit it home. So it doesn't have to be 4.5 pages. It could be 4 pages, 3 pages. Probably not a good idea, but you see where I'm going here. It's just a mathematical formula that says if support is worth 20 points, that's 3 pages of the 15 pages. So I'm going to try to be close to that. Also, program of studies and the budget are worth the least. I'm going to write the least about those things. I'm going to write the most about number 1 and number 4. At least that's my plan. All right, so what you do with a criterion or a set of criteria is that you read each one. Each one is worth a certain number of points, and they're required. Okay, if you skip one, then you don't get any points for that one. So if there are 5 bullets in a section, your reviewer may divide the points by 5 and take off so many points just because you skipped it. Well, wait a minute, Jonna. I put it over here on page 12. Okay, you have one job. Write it in order. Okay, you put everything in order the way it's supposed to go. Don't tuck it over here. Okay, put it where it goes. So this is kind of like a checklist, and when I'm writing, I have a couple of copies of this running around so that I can make sure I've gotten each section kind of outlined in my brain, but also written when I get to that part. Sometimes we write the back section before we write the front section, and that's okay as long as it's all there when you're done. Most of the items in here have more than one thought. So when you look at that criterion, take it apart. Make sure that you parse it and look for whatever it's asking you about. Okay, so let's go to you can choose either page 9, page 14, or page 22, but I want to look at the employer-driven process. Okay? Employer-driven process. Now, on your screen, I've put pages 9 and page 22. Okay, they look kind of different, but they're really saying the same things. And I want to look at 1.1. This is the first real thing you're going to talk about. 1.1 says, describe how this is an employer-driven initiative. First you're going to describe. It's employer driven. I want to break that phrase apart. Okay, we know what an employer is. Do we know what driven means? It means they're behind it. They're pushing it. They're steering it. They're making it go fast. They're getting us to the other side of this transformation. It is employer driven. It does not say, describe how your school had a great idea and you decided to have this new initiative. It's not like we do that in schools, right? No, this is employer driven. So that means the employer had some input on how all of this was going to happen. Okay? It's not just that the Corvette plant in Bowling Green is going to participate. No. The Corvette plant has been working with us for the past year on various career technical elements, and they have come to us with a plan for how we can change the region. And then you describe what that plan is that you're going to form together. Employer driven. It could involve their lack of jobs in the region. I've been working on a grant project, and I heard for the first time this last week about Code Louisville. Never heard of Code Louisville. Code Louisville was created because Louisville had an issue, didn't have enough programmers. And so if you live in Louisville, you can go to school for free and learn how to code. Who knew? Who knew, right? I could have saved myself some tuition there. But what is it? The employers drove that process because they had no coders. So are your employers driving this process to help you get whatever the jobs are that they have? Okay? So employer driven. I think that word was chosen for a specific reason. Okay, so here's another look at how that first set of criteria look. And I took the information this time from page 12, you'll see that on the right side, and then from the rubric, page 22 on the left side. Okay, because you've got 5 bullets and 4 rubric responses. And that always just gives me heartburn. So I have to cross map that, have to look at it. So when I look at that, it's easy to see if you crosswalk it that the first bullet on the left side, not a bullet, the first phrase, detailed explanation of how employers will be driving this initiative, that's a direct match to the first bullet. Then the rubric has detailed explanation of each industry partner's role in the planning. Well, there are 2 bullets kind of for that. The first one says, who are your partners? And the second one says, what's their role in that? Okay? So it's all there. So how do I write it? Do I write it based on the scoring rubric, or do I write it based on the list of those 5 bullets? And my answer is yes. But if I were writing it, I would do it in terms of those bullets. Okay, I would follow page 9 or page 12 and list those all out. And then I would go back to, every time I finish a section, go back to the rubric and make sure I've answered the rubric at 110%. Okay? So I'm going to use page 9 or page 12 to guide my writing. And I'm going to say, for example, on part 1, the first one, I'm going to put 1.1 employer driven. And then I'm going to write about that. Then I'm going to put 1.2 industry partners. We will partner with X, Y, Z, Q, R, S, T. Third one, 1.3. Describe the role of each partner. I'm then going to describe each partner's role, and etc. Why am I that explicit? Well, I've mentioned that I'm a geek. There's the first thing. Second, that's the job. You're writing a grant. It's not there to be pretty. It's there to be communicative. You're going to communicate to a reader, and they need to find the information. And you know, it's not the most fun document to read, a grant, so help them find it. Help your reader find that information. So, you need to make sure that you get to the point. Okay? When you are writing a proposal, you need to get to the point. This isn't about the lovely hills and how your community looks, and it's a lovely place to live. It's just marvelous. Did I mention it was lovely? No. You're going to get straight to the point. Make sure you use those criteria to be as clear as possible. You want to demonstrate your plan for this specific project. You don't want to whine about all the things that didn't work last time. You don't want to whine about your partners. You don't want to whine about not having money. Here's a side note for you. If you're writing a grant, we know you ain't got no money, okay? Don't talk about it. Just, it's called a grant proposal. You have a problem. Your problem is that you have kids who can't find good jobs. They go to college, they get a degree, they come back, and there aren't any jobs that match that. But now you've got jobs in your community that need to be filled that are good paying, well-paying jobs. How do you bridge that gap? That's this project. You're going to plan that out. And you're going to have a great plan for how that's going to happen. Don't beg for the money. Have a plan for what you're going to do with it. In fact, I rarely even talk about the money. I just talk about what we're going to do. Yeah. All right, so the evaluation criteria and the rubric. Here's a couple of examples that I'll give you what I'm talking about with the not whining. The first one, due to more than a decade of budget cuts in our high poverty schools, we've not been able to focus on post-secondary needs of our students. Wah. Okay, that may be true, but you're not special. That's true everywhere. Okay, so don't talk about it. Don't talk about it. What you want to talk about in your grant is more like the last one. Lovely County and Darn Pretty County share many characteristics. Each is rural and each includes a child poverty rate of more than 30%. And while 65 to 70% of our graduating seniors go to college each year, less than 20% of the class of 2014 graduated from 2 or 4 year colleges. Much more specific, not whining, just laying out the problem. Okay? You're not whining about you didn't have any money for it. You're just saying this is our issue, we need to fix it, and we're going to. All right. So now let's talk about the writing process. And this is probably true. Writing is 90% procrastination and 30% panic. It certainly is for me. I worry about the day when I finally got enough information to sit down and do the writing. Shooey, if I just do it, it'd be much easier. So don't be that way. Okay? Get started. And getting started means starting to talk to people. Writing a grant is more talking, thinking, planning, collaborating, data research than writing. 70% of grant writing is not writing. Oh, well, that should make you feel better. If you're not a writer, don't worry about it. 70% is organization and ideas and getting everybody to the table. It's signatures and letters and partners. Okay? That's not writing. Okay? So when you divide up your team, think about that. Who are those people who can help you coordinate this process? Get started now. March seems a long way away. It is not. It is not. So you want to write to those criteria, and I'm going to use the ones on page 9 because to me it's just, again, I'm old. I like that format. That's what I'm going to use. So I'm going to look at page 9, and we're going to go through the 5 parts. We're going to do 1 through 4 and talk about that a little bit, and then we'll do the budget. Okay? And by the time we get some of that done, we will check in over here and see if we have any questions. I'm looking over here. Do we have questions? Yes. Okay, so we'll go to those in just a little bit. All right. So let's look at part 1. Employer-driven process. I've covered 1.1 already. Describe how this is an employer-driven initiative. I'm going to talk about the industry needs, the employer's needs, and how you're helping them fill that. Then you're just going to identify 2 industry partners from at least one of the top industry sectors. Remember those 5 sectors? You've got to have that in there. And it should be relevant to your regional career academy. Okay, so let's say, what does that mean? Okay, if you have a medical career academy, because that's the biggest thing you have in your community, then you might not want to also include one industry that's, let's see, roofing. How's that? Okay, and you're just going to have one course for roofing, and you know it doesn't pay that well anyway. Actually, it does. I know this because we need one. Okay, somebody somewhere is making money on that. All right, so the number 3, describe the role of each industry partner. Now, are they going to serve on some of these committees? Are they going to be planning with you? Are they going to go on site visits? What is the role of each partner? The partners are not there just to be on the list and get you funded. Your job is to determine what their authentic role is and describe that in your proposal. Now, will you be absolutely perfect on that? No, those roles may change as once you're funded and you start implementing. But what do you, on this particular day, as you're writing this proposal, what do you think their role will be? What do they think their role will be? And what are they going to sign off on as you develop this proposal? Number 4, explain how employers will be used to validate labor market information during the planning phase. So how are you going to crosswalk the labor market information to your community? You know, Kentucky may say, we need more health care. And then you begin to come in and look at a healthcare academy, and you go, you know, we don't have any vacancies in healthcare. Our local community, it's not validated. Now, I think that wouldn't be the case. But how are they going to help you validate that this really is a high-need area? And then you're going to provide those letters. Now, notice that it says provide the letters. Your reader's also going to read those letters, and they will be part of this scoring part. Okay, so that 30 points is going to include not only the 4 previous bullets and the attached letters, but the content of those letters and that it's appropriate. Okay? If it's a love letter, not going to be as high quality as if it has some real content and shows commitment between the groups. All right, support, we're 20 points. This shows the level of support from your stakeholders there. Okay. All right, so this has 6 criteria. First one, identify and explain how each school district will be involved in planning the Regional Career Academy. Again, this isn't Lovely County's Career Academy. This is at least 2 school districts coming together and forming that academy. Okay. In Mark's case, he's got 3. How do you do that? How do you make sure everybody's at the table? Number 2, identify and explain how post-secondary partner will be involved in the planning. Okay? Not in, and I want to make sure I say this and slow my language down. My daddy was a lawyer, my mama was a cotton picker. I move around a lot and I talk fast. So, notice that it's not saying how will they be involved in the project. How will they be involved in planning the Regional Career Academy? So not how will they be involved once you develop the academy. What's their role in planning it? We assume they'll be involved, 3 years from now when you have a great academy going. But what's their role in the planning? Number 3, identify and explain how each community partner will be involved in the planning. 4, identify the state-operated area technical centers and or locally operated technical center and explain how they will be involved in the planning. Okay? So you name them and you explain their role in the planning. Number 5, again, detailed description on how the team plans to increase access to high-quality, high-demand career pathways. So how is your planning team going to make that happen? Then provide those letters of commitment from each partner to serve on the team and how they'll be involved in that work. Again, when you start to kind of chart out this grant proposal, and I do this a lot, I take each of those criteria and I put them on a piece of paper and I leave some space in between each and I kind of jot down my ideas. How does that work? It's very helpful for me later when I go to do my writing. As Ms. Waters said in 11th grade English, Jonna, if you're going to do this writing thing, you're going to outline every day of your life. And I laughed because I hate outlining. Yeah, that's exactly what I do every day. Part 3, Program of Studies and Career Pathway Options. Now, sometimes we will start here with our planning because we've got to think about, okay, how are we going to do this and this and this and this? Well, that's okay. Just make sure you respond to the criteria. This isn't just stream of consciousness writing. Number 1, 3.1, explain the process of how the Academy Steering Committee will guide it and give oversight to the Academy. Okay, what's their role? What are they going to do? Who's on that Academy Steering Committee? Explain the process of how your Program Advisory committees will advise program development. Okay. Notice that it says Program Advisory Committees. Okay. If you've got more than one program, will you have more than one program advisory committee? Yes. Explain the role of post-secondary, number 3, that they will play play in evaluating the current career pathway options. So, this is a planning grant. So early in the process, I'm going to get with my post-secondary partners and I'm going to figure out where we are right now. What does that look like? Well, I'm going to have meetings. They've already decided they're on board. We're going to do this department and this department and this department. I'm going to describe that process. And then 3.4, similar but different, how will you determine the new career pathway options? And what's the role of post-secondary in that? That's some hard work when you get to that part. Explain the process of how you'll work with employers to evaluate progress and meet local market needs. Okay? How will you make sure you're meeting that? How will you work with your employers to determine that? And what does progress look like? Okay. Well, you're here, and you want to be here. How are you moving from one to the other? Okay. Again, your employers can help you with that, but you got to think that through because now you're planning to know how that looks. And then another big section on the Regional Career Academy itself. Well, I guess I could have changed it. There we go. 4.1, describe how you plan to transition your participating ATC-CTC into an all-day Regional Career Academy. Now, Mark mentioned this morning schedules. My first thought was the bus and food. How are you going to feed these youngins? Okay, there are a lot of systems and protocols that you're going to have to do, and so this is where you get to talk about how you're physically thinking about making this happen. This is one of those weatherman statements. What do I mean by that? The weatherman gets up every day and says, hey, it's going to be sunny today. In fact, I bet he did not say this morning that it was going to snow in Frankfurt. I might be wrong, but I don't think he said that. He was mistaken. Okay? So you're going to describe your best plan right now, knowing that that may change as you go forward, that transition piece. Describe how this will transform the high school experience from your current model, whatever you're doing now, to provide additional opportunities for students. Number 3, and again, you guys can read, provide your supply and demand data to illustrate your area's need. That's one thought. And discuss how transitioning to a regional career academy could be utilized to address those needs, okay? Take note, that's 2 separate thoughts in that criteria. If you answer part of it, you only get part of the points. Okay, so split that sentence. Make sure you see that. 4.4, describe any barriers to creating and maintaining a regional academy and how you plan to address those. Okay? You may not know all the answers to how to address those. That's okay. You have a planning grant. That's one of the things you're going to be looking at. Provide district resolutions approved by the board. Those are going to be those signed resolutions. And then identify each member of the academic steering committee and who they represent, etc. Okay? So don't forget those board resolutions. You're likely not to get read if you do. Okay, so I just walked you through a criterion. I just want to read another one, make sure. Let's look at number 3.2. So turn back to 3.2 under the program of studies, because there's more than one thought there. And I want you to really get how to pull that out. Explain the process of how your program advisory committees will advise program development to determine and develop appropriate career pathways. Okay? So first off, you've got to tell who your program advisory committees are, if you know yet, how they will advise program development, and then develop appropriate career pathways. Okay? Again, when we're dealing with criteria, we want to read it, come back and read it again, each one, then come back and take it apart. I'll also warn you, and this is for any grant you ever have, if it looks like it's saying the same thing again, it's probably not, okay, in the criteria. If you read a criteria and you say, well, it just asked me that up there, it's probably not. There's some nuance that's just a little different. Okay? You may have to read it over and over. I actually compare words when I do that because I struggle with that as well. Okay? All right. So let's talk for a minute about the budget, and then I got a couple of slides on that. Or actually, let's answer some questions. Let's go over here to our KDE question box. So what are some of our questions there?
Okay, so we've received several questions.
Excellent.
The first question was about basically if two school districts are working together, they're already planning to begin the process at this time. They've already started working on to open a school. Can they still apply even though they're already in the planning phase?
It's a great question.
So my answer to this is sure.
That's what I would say.
You can go ahead and apply. You'll need to have those additional partners if you don't already have them involved.
Right.
So you'll need to definitely have a post-secondary partner. You'll need to have a CTE center, either local or state-operated CTE center, and those business and industry partners. If you already have all those partners, then you're well on your way, and
Right.
I think you can definitely apply for this as well.
And I would agree. And from the stories we heard from Mark this morning, I think, yay, hooray, that they're that far along, but there's still a lot of work to be done, isn't there?
Sure.
Absolutely. So good question.
As part of this initiative, will districts take over the operations of state-run ATCs if it transforms into an all-day regional career academy? So this is one of those things that I would answer and say that there are multiple options here. Some would involve taking over the ATC, and there are options where that would not happen. So it all comes down to that planning process, and you'll have a KDE representative working with you during this process to determine the actual outcomes of that. And so I would not say there's anything set in stone for that right now. Can funds be used for contract services with an industry partner? And when I got a little bit more clarification on this, it was asking about paying for industry partners to work directly with students. And so my answer to this is that this is a planning grant. During the planning phase, the school's not going to be open, so you're not going to have students enrolled in the building, and therefore, no would be the answer. That you would not be able to pay an industry partner to work directly with students because this is a planning grant and not a grant to run the school. The other one is about who can be a fiscal agent. So the fiscal agent needs to be a school district. There are options where you can partner with a co-op, or you can partner with post-secondary and contract with them to provide that additional service that they would provide by being the fiscal agent. But the school district really needs to be the fiscal agent. That's the expectation of this grant. And then the last question that I've not had a chance to answer yet, but it's a pretty good question, is on the cover page, it only has really 4 spots for participants, and they want to know if it can be altered to if they have additional participants, and then who those participants are. And so my answer to this one would be that the cover page can be altered if you have more than 4 participating school districts, but that's really what this is calling out there is who are the participating school districts that are going to work together to create this regional career academy. There are additional spaces or sections of the application where you would identify who your post-secondary partner is, who your participating CTE center, and your business and industry partners. And so the cover page is really looking for who are those participating school districts that are going to work together for this.
Okay, and that's in the middle of the cover page, halfway down, where you've got the 4 blank lines there. So it would be a little unusual if there were 4 districts. That's a lot.
I think we have one right now that's already got 4 working together on this.
Okay.
And so, I mean, if you have 4, 5, 6 participating districts working together,
Put them right there.
just expand it and add the additional participants. I'd be more than happy to see 5 or 6. The iLead Academy in Carrollton has 5 districts working together right now on that one. So more than happy to see several districts working together to do this.
Okay, keep those questions coming in. We're going to keep answering them as we go forward. And we'll talk a little bit about the budget. Yeah, thank you so much. Those were good questions. All right, so let's look at the budget a little bit. The budget has more than one part to it, but it's not that complicated. Okay, so you have a criterion, one criterion This is 5.1. Identify and justify expenditures of planning grant funds. Now, you can do this a couple of ways. If somebody gives me a criterion, I'm going to respond to it in writing. I'm also going to build a really great budget that explains it. But I'm going to look at that and say, did I identify and justify my expenditures of planning grant funds? So what I would do is I would go back and look at my budget, and I would say, okay, in my budget I put that person that's going to help me coordinate things. I put some travel in there for those sites. I put some other professional learning in there for my teams, whatever it is I've put in there. And then I might sum up in a paragraph or two in our attached budget. We have placed this much for each thing, and show how that aligns to what I've said in the proposal. In my proposal, I talked about going on site visits with my, my planning team. I talked about the advisory committee and what they were going to do. And I kind of can line that back, okay? I can show that that's reasonable. Now, because it's a planning grant, you don't know what you don't know. It's okay to say that. Excuse me, I'll say that again. It's okay to say that you're in a discovery process, as Mark outlined this morning. Okay? You're learning this stuff. So you may come across expenses you don't know. All you have to know now is, this is what I'm planning today. The earth will keep turning, Lord willing. And as the earth keeps turning, I'll come back to KDE for different steps along the way as I need to. Okay? But you want to justify those expenditures. Let me give you a really couple of plain examples here. Okay? Well, let me cover this slide first, then we'll come back to plain examples. No matching costs are required. You don't have to cover any of that this time. Also, there are some budget things that are allowed. There are examples in the actual form, but there are also some examples of allowed expenditures earlier. Again, not all inclusive. All items should be detailed. Okay? If you put in there $32,000 for travel, that sounds like you're taking the board to Hawaii. And that's not what we want to see. We want to see some specifics. Why are you traveling? Are you going, are you going on those visits, or are you going to professional learning? What's that travel about? Up to $30,000 of your budget can be spent on the salary and fringe for the team planning lead, whoever that is. Up to $10,000 can be specifically spent to visit other academies. Now, there could be other professional learning again, but that's for those academy visits. And then you have that budget form where you would complete all of that. At the bottom, you can see where it has said these are the limitations on those two things. So here's just a couple of things that I've dummied up. This is an example only, as you'll see by the next slide. This is not Jonna saying you have to put this in here, and even worse, it's not KDE saying it. No. This is just something we've dummied up to say, hey, if I were going to hire someone or contract with someone to provide these services, this is how I might describe it to give it the detail that it needs. Okay? So Sean Smith, Director of Youth for America Advocacy Group, will serve as the lead planner. Okay? What happens if you don't know who your lead planner is? Well, that's okay. You'll get one. Okay? Just describe the type of person that you want to have there. It's not your crazy Aunt Sue who lives down the road. Okay? It's going to be someone with a bit of facilitation skills, someone who can lead all these partners together. Okay? Also, I've listed the fringe there. Remember that the fringe and the salary can't go over $30,000, right? Isn't that interesting that it just happens to add up to $30,000? Supplies for planning events, and I put in there specific supplies. I gave it a general amount, okay, for events at $500 per event. So you've got some detail there. I'm not just saying, hey, we're going to have some meetings. Tried to describe that a little bit. And then travel to at least 3 academies. Now, I don't know exactly where we're going, so I just put some information in that would help. KDE has already vetted that, and that's quite helpful. They already got some spots that you can go visit, and so that'll help you to not have to search all across the entire world. Again, this is only an example, and it's an example of the detail, not the actual costs. Okay? You want to show people that you've thought about it. I tell the story a lot about my dad. My dad was 93 when he passed away a few years ago. He was a teenager in the Depression, okay? And that impacted me a lot, okay? So if I went to my dad and I asked him, hey, Dad, can I have $50 for the weekend? There is no way I'm getting that money. But if I say to him, hey, Dad, can I have $50 for the weekend? Vicki and I are going to Denny's at 6 o'clock on Saturday morning, and we're going to do a last-minute cram session for the ACT. Then after we have the ACT, we're going to go to after we have our cramming session, we'll go to the university, take the test, and I still owe $10 there. And then after the test, we thought we'd have lunch at the university, and we'd celebrate, and then maybe buy a T-shirt, to remember the day. And then I still need gas in my car, too. So can I have $50? That aligns with what he wants, which is me out of his house on a scholarship, and it's detailed, okay? That's what you want in a budget. You want it to tell the story that your narrative told. You're not going to put anything weird in there that doesn't align specifically to what you're going to do in your planning grant, okay? At least you shouldn't. That's another one of those light your pants on fire moments, okay? Now that budget form, that page 13, that's the only form you're supposed to use for that, and you just expand those rows as you need to fill that out. Don't make it 14 pages long. It probably, and in all honesty, will be a page. You probably won't go over to the second page. Okay? So parallel story. Oh, and by all means, talk to your finance department before you get started on that budget. Just give them a heads up. You're writing a grant. You may be calling them or emailing them. I try to use a lot of extra honey because I want to make sure that, if I need them, I can reach out to them and say, hey, how much would that fringe be for that person? Okay? And your district may also have a protocol for that type of thing. And check your math. In fact, I would suggest this. Don't check your math. Give the budget to someone else and have them check the math. Okay? Because I had an editor years ago who used to say, honey, if you put numbers in a column, somebody's going to add them up. That is the darn honest truth right there. And if your numbers are off, why should they give you money if you can't add up a few numbers? Okay? Why should they give you big bucks? So make sure you check that math. All right, so taking a look at the project going forward, what does it look like when you're in the middle of it? Those assurances on page 12. Is it page 12? Take a look at page 12. Actually, it might be page 12. Let's see. Yeah. So those assurances on page 12. When you take a look at those, again, some specific dates of what's going to happen. Make sure that you're aware of that. You know where you're going to be in the process of this project. By April, I believe, you are actually deciding what you're going to do. You're creating a plan and submitting that plan to KDE. March. Nope, it's April. Each cohort submits the academy budgets for the first year. That's not the money you're asking for. That's okay. In April, we've spent most of the year planning this, and here's the budget for what we think our first year of our academy will look like. They're not saying we promise that you'll have one. They're saying if you have an academy, here's the budget for that. And that's a requirement. Okay? Remember, you have pinky sweared when you sign this piece of paper that in April you will turn in that budget that says in the 2018-19 school year. Is that right? Yeah. The next year you'll have an academy. Now it's the next one. Yeah. All right. I'm going to have more coffee any minute now, cameras. All right. So again, your initial allocations listed there. Your other allocations are listed, so you'll know when things are coming in. They've asked for some formative data, the submission of those timelines. Also, KDE will be working with you, talking with you, having conference calls with you all through the process. So that's an important element of this, that you will not be alone. This is a new process. We are quite hopeful that regional academies will be born from this work, but it's new for everybody. So we're learning as we go. All right, let's see. Now I'm going to talk for just a second about meeting your deadline, and then we're going to go back and see if we have any other questions and see if Mark wants to add some things as we've talked through. So maybe some things that I wish I had known kind of things. Man, I wish I had known this before I got started. So to meet your deadlines, it's really important to know not only who's in charge, but who's really in charge. I joke a lot about that. It's not funny, okay? Every organization I work with, there's someone who has, who really is in charge, and then there's the worker bee making it happen. So know who the people are in that process with your grant development. It's really important to make those decisions early. Okay? Also, know what your internal review system is in your district. Some districts, larger districts in particular, you can't just decide you're going to write a grant. You have to go through various processes. I'll also say that your university partners may have a process. They may have to approve anything you write. Now, that's not true of all of them, but some of them, I'm afraid, have given me heartburn more than once by saying, well, we need to review your proposal 10 days before you submit it. You need to know that, okay, because that's going to cut into your time a little bit. I don't know that you'll have that issue, but ask the question. Ask the question of your partners. So begin with your deadline and when you need to have it finished, and just take a big calendar, put it up on the wall, and back those dates up. What do you need to have done, okay, in certain amounts of time? Now, you're fortunate we don't have Christmas to worry about anymore, but you do have a couple of factors. I'm pretty sure it's going to snow again between now and March. Just saying. I'm also pretty sure that the flu is still going to kill us all. Okay, so you've got some issues you're going to have to work with, so you need to get something written down and have a plan for that. Go ahead and begin thinking about who those partners are. If you've been doing any work at all with business and industry, you already know, and with your pathways, you already know who's appropriate. Okay, you've already got that in your head. But, you know, have a meeting with the local economic folks. Go to your regional ad office. Have a brainstorming session there and decide what it is with those 5 industry sectors, okay, that you've got to use one of those 5 or 2 or 3. What are you going to do to meet that need for your students, their families, and the industry? Industry-driven, employer-driven. What do they need? Not just you and your school, not just you and your kids. What do employers need? Okay? Industry-driven. And in the next 5 days, because if you leave here today without a plan of how to create your plan, Monday will come. And you're going to have forgotten it, and strange things happen on Mondays, and you're not going to get back to it for another week. So, I always say 5 days, have a plan. I think you should, for the rest of the afternoon, you should sit down with folks and talk it through. Okay, are we interested in this? How are we going to proceed? What do we have to know to make a good decision on it? And then push forward. And then all you got to do is sharpen your pencils, right? Sharp pencils, clean paper, good light, cover. Oh, now it's too warm. I promise you, this is me. I get everything ready to go, and it's like, oh, okay, no, there's something else wrong. Okay, get your plan in order. Have a team around you, and write your proposal. Okay? Don't forget to ask KDE questions. And speaking of questions, let's check first in to see if we've got any more that came in online.
So we did. We got one additional question. The question is, can the dual credit courses that are offered be only in the core, or is the expectation that the dual credit courses that we're referring to be in the CTE courses?
Oh.
My answer to this one would be that the expectation is that the dual credit courses that we're really asking for here are part of the CTE program of studies that the student's going through. Having those dual credit courses in the core areas is extremely important. We want those as well, but the expectation and the requirement here is that you have dual credit courses in the CTE program of studies.
Which is where that approved, the approved dual credit courses.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so while we love us some AP American history, that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about dual credit first, and second, that aligns with the CTE.
That's right.
Makes perfect sense. Okay, remember when we said at the very beginning, not your money, not free money, and if you don't like some of the rules that's yucky, well, you got to decide on that. Okay? Still a good way to plan. So, Mark, tell me, last year you were sitting here listening to this kind of thing. You were trying to figure out whether you were going to do it. You already had, because I've watched your work for years. You already had some irons in the fire. You had some partners you knew. But what what are some things that, looking back, you go, I wish I could have done that better, or maybe if I had planned this? What are some things like that?
Oh my gosh. Well, you know, this particular grant opportunity came at a time that where we were working with the Work Ready Skills Initiative, which is a perfect partnership because that is a grant for stuff.
Yeah.
It is for equipment to train youth and adults, and this ties in perfectly with this planning grant so that you're aligning those courses for high demand jobs. And so that, we already had that in play. I don't know for some applicants how that might apply, but we already were thinking about that. So that's one thing to keep in mind, especially if there are school districts involved with Work Ready Skills. That particular initiative, this is a perfect tie-in with that, perfect fit. As far as woulda, coulda, wish we could do this or wish we could have done that, you know, we're not experts in everything, and especially when you're dealing with all of these different sectors, and especially when you get those industry people who are experts. They know the ins and outs of everything, and it's very easy to get overwhelmed when you've got the construction people over here, and you have healthcare people over here, and then they get off on their own particular pathways, and you're trying to rope this into how does this big picture look. And so that's a learning process that we're still evolving, and it's really where we're getting everybody in the room to cover the big picture, but then we're having to break out and really concentrate on those particular sectors, because it gets very overwhelming having everybody at that table all at one time. So that's the only thing, but that's something that we're experiencing that we're working through, but you know, we're working through it, so.
So very much like when you get math teachers in a room and you have elementary and middle and
Yeah.
high, and they all have their own issues, and nobody wants to be working on the same things at the same time. So the same thing as an analogy for that. You have the
Exactly.
tech people and the hospital people, they kind of are, yeah.
Yeah, and every piece of information that they bring up about their particular pathway, I mean, and when the healthcare people start talking, I'm like, that's awesome,
Yep.
but I don't know.
Yeah.
And so here we are trying to fit it into this whole regional career academy concept, so.
Yeah. So that facilitator then, that planning person, and having people who can elicit conversations. 'Cause we've all been to meetings where nothing happens.
Yeah.
Right? So being able to get people to talk and to put their thing, that does take some skill, doesn't it?
It does, and you need, you know, this time frame is very good, because for every question that you think you have solved, it opens up 2 to 3 more, because just like what you brought up with scheduling, you think, okay, we can get the schedule lined up, and then what about the buses?
Yeah.
What about food? What about extracurricular? How does and it just escalates,
Yeah.
so.
We're really
but-
good at having school, aren't we?
Yeah.
You know, we're really good at having school, but did I read the word transform somewhere? Yeah, make it a little different. Right?
Yeah, but it can all be worked out.
Yes.
And, you know, that's where we go back to that, what are we here for? We're here for, you know, doing something better for youth, for students, so that we can, especially when you get industry in the room and they have high demands, they say, we could fill these jobs right now. If you have somebody available, we can fill it. Because we have a workforce that's on the verge of retirement. They've got to fill these positions, and these are high-paying jobs,
Yes.
so, and good careers. So, yeah.
And keep our babies at home with good careers, okay? Yeah, hey, send everybody to Disney World 10 years from now, right? That's what we're going to do. All right, so any other questions? Okay. Any closing comments for us as we wrap up for today? Anybody? Oh,
Just
got
now,
one in?
just
Okay.
now. Can our new academy count as the CTE school or do we need to join with another one? I think what they're asking is, can this new academy that they're building count as the locally operated center? That's a requirement in there. I would have to get more information on the specific situation before I would be really willing to answer this question. So I'm going to respond to them and ask them to contact me directly, and we'll talk about this one to see what they're planning, where they're at in the stage, and see you know where we would fall on that answer, because I'd prefer to do that on a one-on-one.
Yep. All right. Any other comments as we wrap up? I put the KDE address up there for asking more questions. Also the website where you can check for the most up-to-date RFA, and also the FAQs will be posted there as we go through the process. So.
I'd like to add, as we close out, again, thanking everybody that joined us. Please keep the questions coming. Best wishes to you and your teams, your communities, as you, if you decide to embark on this adventure with us. Mark can tell you it is an adventure, perilous at times, but this is something we really believe in and are excited to be a part of it. So let us know at KDE how we can assist you and help make you successful throughout this process too. So thank you all for joining us.
Thank you. All right, and that's all we've got today. Check in for the FAQs. Keep those questions coming. Thank you very much.